turning to basketball, they have the Indiana Hoosiers are in my top 4, but I don't know who the other team is. I've got Michigan State. I say at the top. It's stupid to make predictions. I said that a while back. Get out of the prediction game. You don't even know who's on the damn rosters yet, so it's kind of hard. But from what I know, from what we know, Michigan State, they already have a solid roster. Purdue has a solid roster. I think Indiana has a solid roster. We have to see them come together. We have to see them play together because that's what they have not done. They haven't played together.
That's the difference. That's the difference between Michigan State and Purdue and IU, right? Is that the two teams at the top with Purdue and Michigan State have experience together, whereas IU does not yet. Now that doesn't mean that IU will not get there eventually, and they might be significantly better as the season goes on, but they're going to take some time to come together. I think it is the easiest way to put it.
I agree, and so we'll see how that turns out. But I think Indiana, as I said this a while back, I said this before they even filled the rosters out. I think Indiana is going to have a much better team next year, regardless, because it's not going to be the two-man role that they had. Everything has gone through Trace Jackson Davis for what seems like the last 5 years. So. I'm glad. I'm honestly glad to see, and I don't mean this in a negative way towards anybody, but I'm glad to see that Trace Jackson Davis is gone, that Miller Kopp is gone, that this is going to be a completely different style of team, a team that has 5 guys. It better have 5 guys that are contributing when they're on the floor, because if not, you cannot win in the NCAA. Now I know that. You want to say, well, we got to put them to the Big Ten first. I get that. But why you're not going to play a different style. So take that style into the Big Ten, because first of all, it should be like taking the triple option up against a football team. They're like, what the hell? We don't see this very often. Yeah. So, so that's what you have to do, I think.
So this would be, I don't want to say it's ever going to be terrible. It could be great or it could be terrible. I think that's too vast of a range. But what I would say to that is, when you don't have a guy like Trace Jackson Davis, I do think that this team will probably be more athletic, and they'll probably open it up to where you're going to depend on more guys. But if they probably don't have that one guy they can depend on like they did Trace Jackson Davis. So that, to me, like, it can be really good. Because
I don't know. You got Xavier Johnson.
Yeah, but he hasn't proven, I don't think, that he can be a 25-point per game scorer.
No. But you don't want him being a 25-point game per scorer either, because if your point guard is scoring 25, then the ball's not being distributed like it needs to be.
I don't disagree, and we'll get Dylan's take on this. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that when you don't have that guy, then you have to have all 5 guys. And if you don't, then that's where a problem, like if there's an issue with chemistry or something, and we've seen this before with Indiana, if there's an issue with chemistry or a guy's not satisfied in his role, then that causes a ripple effect, and you're going to start to have problems. So when you depend on that many guys, I think ultimately it's going to be a good thing, because Mike Wood's system and a new offense is going to look better. But I'm just saying, when you don't have one guy to depend on, that puts a lot of stress on that entire team.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the way to put what you were saying, Dustin, is that IU has a higher ceiling this year, but their floor might be a little bit lower. I think Trace Jackson Davis, just his presence raises the floor, right? You are not going to be a bad team with Trace Jackson Davis on your team. You might be a mediocre one, which is what happened the first 2 years under Archie Miller, but you are not going to be a bad team. Right. I don't think this IU team will be bad either. But if it doesn't come together, it could struggle, right? I think this is going to take, and what you were saying with you need 5 guys working together, this is going to be Mike Woodson's toughest coaching job at IU. He's going to have to do a great job this year to put these guys in positions to succeed around each other. He's done what he needs to do on the recruiting trail. He's gotten the talent into the program. They have the talent to win. Now you need to go out and put them in positions to succeed and maximize those skill sets. And I think Woodson is the question with Woodson was never his coaching acumen, right? We knew that was high level. It was whether he could get players into the program. He's done that. Now you let the guy who was an NBA coach for 10 years go put these guys in positions to succeed like he did for 10 years in the NBA. I think they're in good shape. I think Xavier Johnson can be. You don't want him to be the 20-point per game scorer that Trayce Jackson-Davis was, but I think the ball is going to be in his hands on as many possessions as it was for Trayce Jackson-Davis. And I think if he averages something like 14 and 7, I think you're in pretty good shape. Yep. If you're Indiana. If he's a guy that's going to get you the ball, get the ball to the rim. He's going to move the ball. He's going to create shots for teammates, and IU has the teammates now around him, not just Trayce Jackson-Davis, who are going to make plays when he gets them the ball. I think that there's a foundation for success there. Now they just have to go do it.
The Boston Celtics lost Game 7 by playing what Charles Barkley and those guys described as hero ball.
Yeah,
that exactly. They were all just playing individually, and exactly what you're saying. Indiana has to get these guys that are all new, Khalil Ware, Mackenzie Mbako, to gel, Sparks, to gel together while they're on the floor. But I said it earlier. I think this could be a team that Indiana has that, depending on who fills that 2 spot, a team that averages double digits in all 5 spots. You just mentioned Xavier at 14 points. Well, that's perfect. 14 points a game for him, 12 points a game for Malik Renew, whatever. When you have 5 guys that are averaging in double figures, even if it's 14 points and below, that is a team that is going to win a lot of games, period. Yeah. But then Indiana is going to have to bring these guys in, get them together, and knowing that they're going to leave. Khalil Ware, he probably won't be here next year. Mackenzie Mbako, Xavier, Renew might not be here next year. But so these guys got to quickly come together before they disperse again. But I think with the style that Mike Woodson is going to probably play offensively, that won't be that difficult for those guys to gel. It's going to be a more open, free-flowing type of offensive system.
I think that's the biggest thing is he's not going to try to put these guys in a box, right? He's not going to try to put a limit on what they can do with the ball. And we saw that with Trayce Jackson-Davis, where there were times where Mike Woodson was telling him, hey, we want you to do more. Bring the ball up the floor, do what you got to do. And I think that he'll push Khalil Ware to do that. He'll push Mackenzie Mbako to do that. He'll push Malik Renew to do that. Like Mike Woodson is not in the business of putting a ceiling on what his players can do and saying, this is your role, you do X. Now you want to have defined roles as the season goes on. You are the guy that we look to do X, but we don't want to tell you can't do Y just because we want you to do X, right? And so I think that is what Mike Woodson brought from the NBA is we want you to have a multiple skill set. I think that's really what he has instilled in this program. I think it's been for the positive almost across the board.
Philip asked, who in the rotation, the top 7 of 8, do you count to be the knockdown 3-point shooter consistently? No idea, because they don't have one on there that's from last year that shot the ball enough to really count. Mbako is supposedly a good shooter. Xavier can shoot the ball. We know that they've been working on that. Last night specifically, someone asked something of Trey Galloway, or Mike Woodson was talking about Trey Galloway about that he shot the ball well last year, but they asked about having Trey shoot the ball, and he said, "Hey, this is Mike Woodson said, I have never held a player back from shooting the ball."
Yeah.
So there you go.
Trey Galloway went from 24% as a 3-point shooter as a sophomore in 21-22 to 45% last year.
He needs to be the guy.
But he's got to shoot the ball more.
He does.
I mean, because that's like two attempts per game.
Right, exactly. And now the reason he didn't shoot as much last year was because they had Miller Kopp to be the shooter, right? So and Miller Kopp was very, very good last year as well. And I actually think, and this is a tangent, but I think we underrated the contribution that Miller Kopp made to IU's success last year. I think he was terrific, especially compared to how much he struggled the season before. That's neither here nor there at this point. But Trey Galloway, I think, will have to step up. I do think that they're going to try to bring in at least one more guard to compete with Trey Galloway for that shooting guard spot. I think Trey Galloway will ultimately end up being the starter there. And then Xavier Johnson, 38% threes the last 2 years. Mackenzie Mbako, as you said, can shoot. I don't think Malik Renew is going to be a three-point shooter this year. He showed it a little bit last year. I wouldn't expect him to be out there. Khalil Ware, I worry about Khalil Ware because, and I've said the same thing about Xavier Booker at Michigan State, they're guys that should be down low, grabbing rebounds and doing big man things, but he would rather float around the perimeter. That seems to be where he's more comfortable, and he's not a good enough three-point shooter to justify that. He was, I think, 29% at Oregon last year, and there he made some big ones. But they're gonna if this is gonna work, Khalil Ware is gonna need to be big man and not just I'm 7 foot, but I want to be on the perimeter guy.